Welcome to the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcast, please follow, hit the like button, or any subscribes. It really helps us with the algorithms. Santa Cruz Coffee Break is produced by the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum. All opinions are those of the speakers. We invite you to join us on the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF for more fun. Now, let's get on with this installment of Santa Cruz Coffee Break.
We would like to welcome Issac Jang, a guitar maker from Southern California, and to the Santa Cruz Guitar Players podcast, which is a little unusual for us because we're talking about somebody else's guitars. But Issac and Richard are really good friends, and Richard asked us if we'd talk to Issac. So we are here today, and we are really excited after what I saw. I think I saw one of your guitars at Fretboard Summit. And then I've been seeing some Facebook posts, and from what I see on the web, you make lovely, lovely instruments. So welcome, Issac.
Thank you, and thank you for having me at Santa Cruz podcast. This is really fun already.
Well, let's start by finding out what's your background? Where do you come from, and how did you get involved with guitars?
Okay, my name is Issac Jang. I live in Los Angeles, and I'm originally from Korea. I moved out here when I was 12, grew up here basically the rest of my life here. And I went to a guitar making school at Brian Gallup's in Michigan for 2 months. And upon finishing the school, I came down back to LA, apprenticed with my wonderful mentor, Kathy Wingert, for 10 years. And while I was apprenticing, I've also worked at Westwood Music in the repair shop. So I've worked with Fred Walicki, whom I dearly love and learned a lot of repairs, but also just seeing how he interacted with musicians and clients. That was sort of a big learning experience for me. And that's where I actually met Richard and got connected with Santa Cruz Guitar Company because we did a lot of repairs. We sold what Santa Cruz Guitar didn't really need a lot of repairs, but we did some warranty work and sold their guitars. And Richard invited me over to the Santa Cruz Guitar Company for a crash course. And I spent a one full day going over sort of how they went about doing the repairs. And then we had more interactions after that. And now I am building my own guitars under Issac Jang Guitars. And I have been building my own guitars for about 9 or 10 years at this point. And started out in a small shop in Hollywood and expanded into a bigger shop in downtown Alhambra, just by the south of Pasadena. And just a very small number of instruments a year, maybe like 6 to 8 guitars a year. And that's where I am at, and that's what I've been doing now full time.
Quite a resume. The wallet connection is extremely wonderful because I know a little bit about him. I knew him a little bit when I lived in Los Angeles, and he really does have a very good rapport, and every musician in LA knows him. Everyone. I think he's either worked on their guitars or sold them something, or you know, had lunch with them at one point or another. But what a wonderful guy. And Kathy Wingert.
Yeah,
that's the moon right there. So congratulations on that kind of opportunity. And it fascinating, isn't it, Tad, as we're in this time when we're talking about forgiveness of college loans and things like that, that in 2 months and not 4 years, and to get a visual degree is a 4 to 7 year degree, and in 2 months you're building guitars that are or you're on your life path, which is
Right.
fantastic. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, it was a really good experience for me because I went there with very minimal understanding of how guitars really worked. I mean, I tinkered around guitars, but not in a systematic or methodical manner. So I went there, set myself or they set me up a very strong, firm foundation, which helped me to get into or get my foot in the door to the guitar world.
So what was your motivation to go to Lutherie school? I mean, did you come from a background as a musician or as a craftsperson, or just wanting to get out of the house?
What got me started was I started playing guitar when I was in middle school, and just playing at a local church, and I got intrigued. So I just kept playing, and I really liked the guitars, but I knew my career path that wasn't really gonna be what I could pursue with my skills that I had, or that's what I sort of kind of figured. Is like, well, there's so many great players out there. I don't think I could, make it out there. So I just sort of explored around, and in the meantime, I also encountered a video footage of this amazing acoustic guitar player, because I started out as an electric guitar player, and I saw this amazing man playing acoustic guitar like electric guitar. Later, I found out it was Tommy Emmanuel, and that was like, whoa! It's an eye-opening experience, and the whole sound of acoustic guitar aspect really intrigued my curiosity, and I wanted to sort of find out more about what that entailed, and that's sort of what got me into the whole guitar world.
So it looks like you're on maybe the third floor or so. You're up in the air there. I mean, you've got a hell of a view out your shop windows there. That's a enviable shop.
I'm very grateful. It's a second story building, but it is at the level of maybe like a third or fourth floor. It's a commercial building that I think, was a designated bomb shelter at one point. It's an old building, no elevator, so 31 steps up with a lot of machines to bring up. So I had to hire professionals, and yeah, I'm here. I don't think I want to move out for a while.
So how much space do you have?
This shop, I have 1,300 square feet. My old workshop was 180 square feet.
1,300. That's a nice size. That's very usable, very workable.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to it.
Tad is quite a woodworker himself with quite an amazing shop. In fact, we were down there last summer to buy a bandsaw from somebody just a little bit north of Alhambra. We drove down in one day, loaded it in his pickup truck, and drove it back. And I think it was his fifth bandsaw.
Wow.
Yeah, well,
he has a tool problem.
Yeah.
What did you pick up?
It was a Davis and Wells 20-inch. Yeah, it was, it was one of those things. It was on eBay, just ridiculously cheap because he wouldn't ship it, and nobody. I don't think people buy 900-pound machines off of eBay on a regular basis. So, yeah, so got it ridiculously cheap, and it was a fun drive down with Richard. And it was a fun restoration project, but I have come to my senses. I'm now down to only 3 bandsaws, maybe 4, 3 probably.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about tools. What are you using to build? I mean, what are your? That's a challenge, I know, for a lot of craftspeople, is finding good quality tools these days.
Exactly. I have a minimal collection of power tools, I guess basic power tools. When I moved into this shop, I had to expand it a little bit more, but let me run down of what I have as I can see here. I am a big fan of Inca tools. I have I started out with my small Inca bandsaw. Is that the 8-inch one?
The three
The two
the, the 340, the 10-inch.
340, yes, to 10-inch. I have that one. I've been using that forever. And I have a Inca 570, which is the Tersa head jointer. Love that thing. And all my tools are 110 volt. I had a limitation for the electricity here, so I'm sort of limited to that. And from there, I have a Laguna 14BX for my resawing work. I have a Powermatic 14-inch. I'm looking here. I have my Powermatic drum sander that's 2244, the open-ended one, and I have a Jet edge sander, Powermatic drill press, spindle sander. So it's sort of a very basic tools. Some of my fun tools are my mini, I think Jim Burns makes this table saw. It's like a modular saw that I use for fret slotting only. Basically, I'm sort of scared of table saw, so I stay away from it as much as possible. And the rest of it is just mostly hand tools. I have a fun collection of Japanese chisels and hand saws and a lot of different tools that I like to work with, and all kinds of sandpapers for finish work.
Yeah.
Probably spent a little too much money on the sandpapers, but yeah, I have all various kinds from 3M to these Japanese brands that are really, really fun, that are very consistent in cut, but cuts very fast, and all different kinds. So yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize how important sandpaper is in producing a really, really fine wood finish, which is one of the things people look for in guitars like yours. Is, they're not tolerant of anything that isn't finished almost perfectly. So it's hard
and
sandpaper.
Yeah, and I've gotten into the habit of using my sort of hand cutting tools and scrapers to get it to the much closer, so that I'm touching my guitars at the roughest maybe 150. That's for the necks, but on the bodies, I'm probably starting around 220 to 320 most of the time, and that's because in my old small shop, I had to sort of minimize the dust creating practice. Even though I have a downdraft table with me, I like to sort of minimize some of those aspects. So I've just gotten to the habit of cutting with a handsaw, plane it, and then scrape it, and then just give it a little finesse with 320 or 600, depending on the applications. But that's sort of my habit these days.
Excellent. So, and then the other part of the project that's going to be probably even harder than getting good tools is wood. How have you managed to come up? I've been looking at some of your guitars online, and you've come up with some amazing pieces of wood for somebody who's been in the business as short a time as you have.
Yeah, I am very grateful because Kathy told me early on that wood is going to be my biggest asset. So she said, every time you get extra cash, put that aside, and whenever you get a chance to buy wood, you buy wood. And I think that has been a good practice. So by the time I moved into my own shop, I already had enough wood maybe to get 50 guitars
Wow.
going. Yeah. And when that was already back in 2007, 2008. I mean, that was even at then it was hard to get good wood, but I was still able to find some of them, and also I think Richard and Carolyn helped me source some of the woods through their connections. So I'm very grateful for that too. But yeah, it's an ongoing journey, and also making guitars with such wood brings in more attraction from different people who have quality woods. So I would actually get contacted by other people who would just say, "Hey, I have this wood. You want it?" So I would get connected with some of that. So it's sort of like a snowball effect.
Excellent, excellent. So your guitars, how do you approach building a guitar? What is your, I guess I should ask first, how many of your guitars do you build spec, and how many are built as specific commissions for individuals who are reaching out to you?
I started out as building a couple of specs for a show, but I think as soon as I went to my very first show back in 2015 at Memphis, I received uh, quite a few orders to the point where I had to build my own shop. So at the time, I was utilizing my work spaces. I was borrowing a bench at Kathy's shop, using some of my building benches at the school that I was teaching at Musicians Institute in Hollywood. We had a guitar craft academy, so I was able to use their workspace. But at one point, I was like, I can't do all of this, remotely, or not remotely, but sort of outside of I need to consolidate everything. So from then on, basically everything that I've been building is all custom orders. I tried to slip in one or two spec guitars, but I couldn't keep up with the orders to fulfill. I think it's because I'm only building a few guitars a year, so that's probably the reason. And I'm very slow.
That's not a bad problem to have.
So
So when you work with somebody to build a guitar, how do you approach it? What's your approach when a customer comes to you and says, "Hey, I got lots of money, build me a guitar"?
I start out with asking questions about what their current go-to guitar is, and that gives me a reference to what kind of the sound that they're used to or that they're pursuing. And I have a lot of conversation about that because what I tend to do is I sort of put a lot of those conversation and information in my head, and when I start picking out the wood to building and voicing instruments, I sort of use the internal information to come up with the sound design in my head, to sort of hear what I hear from the wood, and then sort of as I'm tapping the wood, I like to sort of translate all that, infuse that into my process. So that means I have to have a lot of conversation with each client who comes to me, and sort of figure out what I'm building for them. And also, one of the things that I do is get or ask for a tracing of their left hand, ask for their height, so that I could build a sort of custom profile next. And also with the body depth, I can sort of adjust everything according to the person's height and ergonomic features, sort of all mixed in there. So while my guitars look very sort of generic, a lot of features that I do are actually very customized.
A tracing of their hand, eh? That's a technique I've never heard of before.
Well, actually, I picked it up from Irvin Samaji. Irvin Samaji used to do that. I don't know if he still does it, but that is one of the ways for me to visualize what what the client would actually sort of hold, and that I could put my hand over that, and that would usually be my reference point to hold the neck and get the neck width and profile thickness and all of those points.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
Yeah. Interesting.
What a great idea.
The other thing I noticed in looking at some of your guitars, you incorporate some really intriguing visual and design elements. into your guitars. Can you tell us where those came from? Are those an evolution of other things you've seen, or are they just inspirational?
Uh, if you're referring to the bend away, the cutaway that I do, that actually comes from a legendary guitar maker in Japan named Mitsuhiro Uchida. And I believe he worked for Loudon back in the 80s, but he's now sort of at the point where he's not accepting orders because he's so backlogged from the early years. But when you look at his guitars, there's a lot of those sort of twisting of geometry, and I'm only borrowing a very small portion of his design, and with his permission, of course. I actually called him, and he was so gracious to let me use it. Oh, of course. And he sent me a bunch of other pictures, and it's like, oh, take a look what I'm working on now. And I've just been forever grateful for that, because that's sort of a key elements that I've incorporated into my guitars. But the other aspect that you're seeing a lot of different lines and curves on my guitars are all from Kathy, because spending 10 years with somebody, while they're not the exact curvatures and lines, it's something that you get your eyes accustomed to. So you become familiar with certain lines and curves on the guitar. And the guitars are not just one single 2D dimensional curves. When you look at it from the front view, it's everywhere you hold the guitar, you hold it from different angles. You're trying to see the lines that has to really flow. And one of the things that Kathy taught me is, when you make a guitar, put a design, put it on the wall, look at it. Every time you pass by it, make a correction, back and forth. And that sort of has been a way for me to come up with some of the designs that I do. And also, a lot of my designs I try to keep it minimal, because when I first started out, I wanted to sort of make the guitar more about the sound rather than catching your eye per se, because that's what I spend most of my time at Kathy's, is really coming up with the fine tuning all the components so that I can get the sound quality that I'm looking for. So that was sort of my way to present my guitar, and that also became my feature at one point, because I like the minimal design. I'm like, oh, thank you. So I just kind of kept at it, of course, making small variations here and there, but that's been my approach.
Yeah, I have to admit that I've not had the opportunity to see or hear one of your guitars in person, but they sure do record well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, what about other aspects? I mean, what sizes of guitars have you built? I've only seen a half a dozen or so online. I don't know. Are you specializing in any particular size or style, or are you still exploring all that?
I build highly customizable instruments. Although about 90% of my current commissions are all OMs, and my OMs that I build are more in the modern style, meaning they're slightly wider at the lower bout, and I customize the body depth sort of in a very high variance, excuse me, because of different tonal pursuits or qualities that each client is looking for, and also for ergonomic reasons. And so because I can. So and in the past I built dreadnoughts as well, but I haven't really built many dreadnoughts. I offer a small jumbo that has a 16-inch lower bout, and I built a unique instrument to me, which was a tres cubano. That's a Cuban instrument. It's a 3 doubles, and it's a Cuban instruments, but basically built out of like a double O size guitar, and has yeah, just different spacing. And that client actually came through Richard. Richard Hoover sent me his friend San Miguel Perez, who is fantastic. He's a virtuoso tres cubano player, but he's also a great guitar player. And he's been touring with Colin Hay at Men at Work. And so I built that instrument for him maybe about 8-9 years ago. So that was sort of a custom instrument. And I have just, so I always come up with different ideas, but right now I'm fulfilling some orders that are overdue, and when I get some extra time, I could probably come up with more. But I also offer like double O size that are based off like L00 Gibson style. So, you know, all different types of instruments in progress or in queue.
Very nice, very nice.
You just came back from the Fretboard Summit.
Yeah, that was a fantastic, amazing show.
Mostly, I hate to use the word bullpen, but just one room where all the makers were in, or were you in little areas or separate areas in the hall, or you guys just in a big group? How many were there?
There were about 50 guitar makers, and we were placed on a same floor but smaller rooms. So each room had maybe about 10 to 15 builders, and so that in about 3 different rooms. And then there were other rooms that were dedicated for sort of bigger companies like Collings, Martin, and then there's a electric guitar makers lounge in the different floor. So they were sort of divided into different big rooms. And I think given the fact that it's a actual music school, it's a beautiful school, and it made sense. And people were sort of navigating different rooms and having just checking out guitars. So it's a little bit different than the traditional style of guitar shows where you see just a big hall, maybe 2 big halls and different guitars.
It sounds nicer.
Old Town School of Folk Music was the first place I ever saw a performer, and it happened to be Doc Watson, and I think it was 1963 or 1964. And I could take the train into Chicago, and saw Doc and Merrill, and just my world just opened up,
Wow,
just opened up.
that's amazing.
And you took some instruments there. You had a couple instruments with you.
Just one.
Just one.
Yeah, I have been working on a series of guitars that I started maybe 2 years ago because I was trying to catch up from all my backlog, and in the while I was setting up my new shop, and I had my first child, so that was all happening in the last 2 years, and the guitar that I took to the show was one of the 7 guitars that I've been working on for basically past 2 years, and that guitar is now shipped and delivered to a happy customer. So.
Yeah, having a baby can definitely make getting things done a little more challenging.
Yes. Yeah, still trying to figure out how to work this. I mean, I'm not used to rescheduling things because I could usually make things happen. I'm like, oh, but my child, things are now. I understand what it means to go pick up a child from school. I was like, oh, okay, so that's what it's like.
Yeah, happy to say I'm beyond that finally.
And are you doing your own finishing?
I am. And that was actually also with a big help from Santa Cruz Guitar Company. I've been talking well, I talked to Glenn Nichols. I don't know if you know him. He was a finisher a while back, and he went on to work with Kenny Hill. Later, he went to work with Bill. I'm spacing out. Bill Tippin, and now he's building his own beautiful electric guitars under Retrograde. But he gave me a lot of information on the building schedule, the finishing schedule, and of course, Adam Stark has been a great resource. He's been a big help, and Steven Strom, a lot of the Santa Cruz, sort of the family members, they all have been an amazing help. So I have my little touch-up area that I call in my shop, and I spray my finish and nitro, and it gives me a lot of control, and it's I would say it's sort of a love and hate relationship, because I like the experience of really being able to see the guitar that I've been working on for like 8 weeks, and then first layer of sealer you put on there, just the whole thing just glows, and I feel privileged to have that experience myself. And then of course after that, it's all sanding for like, I don't know, 2-3 days nonstop, and then your moment that you're finally buffing and you're seeing the whole thing in sort of gloss, shiny, a piece of guitar body and neck. I mean, that's very rewarding. But of course, it's also endlessly chasing after small details and reflecting through different kinds of lights. I mean, I'm using fluorescent, incandescent, halogen light, LED. I mean, all different 4 different lights, because they show different things on the finish. So I sort of always chasing and talking to other builders almost on weekly basis to talk about different techniques and approaches. I mean, it's a unending journey, but I'm having fun.
That's quite amazing. I mean, that finishing is such a difficult process for so many builders. It's almost like a craft in and of itself. And it's interesting that you're able to fit that in the shop, because a lot of people would have a hard time fitting a proper finishing space into a workshop.
That was not part of my plan to do that originally. When I worked at the school that I taught at, they're now discontinued from COVID. But we had a spray booth that was grandfathered in from years ago, because I think it used to be a ESP guitar company, but it turned into a guitar classroom. So I had to teach guitar finishing as part of the course program, and I had a spray booth. So I was like, well, I guess I have to sort of do it. And I kind of wanted to avoid doing finish work, and for all different reasons. And I just told myself, okay, I'm gonna just do my first 10 guitars. I'll just do the finish work, and then from there, I'm gonna maybe outsource it, because Adam Stark is amazing. I mean, his finishes are just, 11 out of 10. I mean, just phenomenal. So that was my original plan. But after doing about 10 guitars, I got hooked. So it was sort of like, once you get hooked, and you just kind of have a hard time letting go. So I'm still finishing my guitars to this point. Maybe it might change, maybe it might not, but that's just how I kind of got doing my own finish work.
Well, especially getting that very first coat on, it gives you a chance to see right then if there's any problems, any issues, anything, and sending something in the white off to somebody else to finish, you may miss some of those little things. Of course,
my goodness,
it can also lead to being hypercritical.
I feel like I became a better woodworker, or better at building guitars, because I had to do my own finish, because I put the first sealer. I'm like, oops, whoa, what's going on here? So I had to come back and basically correct everything, and everything shows under the finish. So I had to really be mindful of what I did and how I approached guitar making. So I made pretty significant corrections in my first 5 guitars, and then from there it's a small subtle refinement. But like you said, you can see it. Like, oh, oops.
Yeah, and it's better when the oops is in your shop rather than getting a call from the finisher saying,
Yeah. Yeah, and there's just so many corners and different crevices you're finessing on your woodworking of the guitar, and then when it comes to finish, I sort of felt like, oh man, this is a lot of doing small things, kind of getting into all different areas, and it was, yeah, I just felt like I had to do it because I sort of knew where things were, so it was sort of easier for me to connect those when I did my finished work.
Perfect. So, I don't know. Is there anything more you want to tell us about your guitar building or your Luther?
I want to know the best piece of advice you think you've ever gotten.
Ooh.
Best advice. Fred Wallace told me, I don't know if it's quote unquote, but he said, there's not much traffic in your extra 5 miles or so. So that was sort of the best advice that I actually still in my heart, that I take it, live it, because especially working alone, it's a lot of inner struggle to your work. You look at the guitar like, oh, is it good enough? No. And it's like and he really kind of nailed that for me, because I spent a lot of time by myself, and I had to really fight that. And when I spent a week at Santa Cruz Guitar Company with Darren, and I went there to sort of help out with the warranty repairs for about a week. And what I learned and saw was there is a very strong accountability system. So when you're working on a guitar, you have other colleagues look at your guitar or the part of the work you're working on and have them check. And if it's not good enough, it's getting sent back. And that is something that I thought was amazing, because it's hard to get that kind of accountability system working by yourself. So I had to sort of take that and then sort of put myself into that shoes every time I'm working on my own guitars now, back in my shop, say, well, nah, all right, going back. So I had to sort of do that back and forth. But that was also a just, yeah, really good experience that I sort of took on.
Interesting. So should we ask him our usual questions? What, like, the first one is always, what would be your desert island album?
Yeah, I was going to ask him if he listens to music when he's working, or if it's quiet.
It varies. I would go through the phase of listening to podcasts. I would go through the phase of listening to music, and then some critical aspect of guitar making, complete silence, nothing else, just but wood, because I have to really listen to that. But a lot of sort of different tasks that requires like no listening of the actual wood, running, like, processing parts. I listen to music most of the time and some podcasts. So Desert Island album.
Just today.
Yeah, it can just be today.
Just today.
We aren't actually going to put you on the desert island with it, so.
Eric Clapton, Tears in Heaven.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
That
interesting.
and actually, uh, Darren Webb, he gave me a piece of maple that belonged to Eric Clapton's neck. I still have it somewhere.
FTC number 16, I think that was.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I only know because I have FTC number 17, so it's
Amazing.
yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting, and you don't make classicals, and yet that's a real Ramirez record.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah. It's just something about that sound. Just the whole album. I just it was something that I grew up on, and I just love that.
Cool.
Yeah, and something that I've also sort of kind of grew into is more that I started out as listening to acoustic guitar only sort of music for a really long period of time, but I've started to become a little bit more uh, aware and open and start to actually like sort of music as a whole, like with the guitar music, whether it's the guitar music or music that has guitars in it. And I'm starting to hear more and more of that and into my playlist and collections. So
Do you play yourself? Yeah,
I do.
A little.
Yeah, just not as much as I like to because my fingers are always usually all like sanded down. My nails are every time I try to grow a little bit nail, it's like, oh, it's gone. Yeah.
Tad, you got any other questions? You took us through a wonderful tour. A really wonderful tour.
Yeah, I think that the shop, just from what we're seeing, just looks beautiful. I mean, to have a shop with big windows and a view, that just so exciting. I mean, I'm thinking about my little warehouse with no windows and no skylights, but but your space looks lovely, and I got to admit, you're lucky to have an Inca 570. It's a hell of a machine.
It took me.
Very few people are going to know what we're talking about, but I at one point I did have two of them, and I sold one to Leo Buendia. So he's got. So
we were talking about that literally as he was going to pick it up from you. So you live like 5 blocks away from him.
Well, not quite that close, but pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just have to get his set up with a nice variable speed direct drive one of these days. So,
wow. So that's good to know. Yeah. I mean, I basically told Leo, say, hey, because Mike Baranick and I were. Well, Mike Baranick turned me on to the Inca 570, and I told that to Leo. I was like, hey, Leo, you need to get it. And so Leo found it. He's like, oh, I just found it like, nearby my house. I'm like, that's crazy because that's not usually how it happens with Inca 570. If anybody knows what that means, but it's got the Tersa head and the whole package there. So amazing.
So we'll consider starting an Inca 570 podcast at a later date, but for now we'll keep that between us.
Yeah, and we have Jesse here at Eagle Tools. I mean, he's like 10 minutes away from me, and
Jesse Berrigan is the finest tool person I have ever known. I know Jesse going back, 45 years now. I used to work at a place called the Cutting Edge in Berkeley, and he worked at the Cutting Edge in Los Angeles or Beverly Hills. I don't remember. So yeah.
So you're also the Inca expert then. I mean, if you worked at Cutting Edge, I know Greg Brandt worked there.
Yeah. Well, he worked in LA. Yeah. I was up in Berkeley. Yeah. I wouldn't say expert, but yeah, I've been through more than a few of those machines. So the 5
amazing,
and the 2 you have are actually the 2 of them that are my favorites. So that's
Nice. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I feel very fortunate to have those two tools in my collection.
Very,
I love it.
very good. Well, I
Uh,
think it's been fun. I mean, it's been wonderful talking to you. I mean, now I understand why Richard recommended we talk to you, because this has just been a blast. And you're a
oh,
great person. It would be great to come down and visit you at some point. But we'll see how the world spins in the months and years ahead.
I'll invite you to Tad's in Berkeley.
oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah,
I
next time
will
you're
love.
up there, you should see the shop. You should see his shop and see his collection.
Oh,
And
oh my.
Or if you need tools, let me know, because my wife is undoubtedly going to be happy to get rid of a lot of them.
I'm the
think-
first one.
I think we could also go to the wood world on that one too, but we won't.
Oh, wow.
Thank
Oh, that's so. Yeah, thank you so much, and
Thank
thank
you
you for.
really for taking the time out of a sick child and all this. You really shared a beautiful spirit and a real passion and joy for what you do.
Oh, well, thank you, and I gotta definitely. I mean, big thanks to Richard Hoover for making me his friend. uh, we met in Healdsburg back as I think back in 2008 as my first year as an apprentice, and he invited me to Santa Cruz Guitar Company, and I was like, oh wow! I just went, and he literally gave me personal tour for like 2 hours, sent me down and talked, and that still is like the biggest memory that I have. I mean, with Richard, and it's been going on since then, even more. But yeah, he's been an amazing mentor in the business. Big uncle, love Richard Hoover. So thank you.
We will join you in those sentiments.
Yes, absolutely.
And we should say that we will have links in the podcast to your website. And I know that you sell through North American Guitar. Is there anybody else that has any of your guitars if people want to go looking?
I have about 11 dealers that I've I've worked in, and of course I can't even deliver a guitar to them. I'm putting them in rotation for like every 2 years at this point. But Dream Guitars, Guitar Gallery, Craig Snyder, CR Guitars, they're my US dealers.
Okay.
Along with the North American Guitars. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. And people can get in touch with you through the website and get onto your waiting list, I assume?
They could call me and email me. Yeah. However I'm reachable. Yeah.
Very good. Well,
thank you very much. Thanks for spending the time with us. Really, we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking time to talk to me. I'm just a lowly guitar maker, just making guitars. So I really appreciate that.
Fantastic.
Not a problem. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much.
And try to stay dry in LA, and have a great afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Too. We'll see you soon in person.
Yep.
Hope so.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this installment of the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. For more music-related fun, please join the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF or santacruzguitarplayers.com. If you have any questions or possible podcast topics, please contact us. If you have a product or service that you feel would be of value to our listeners, please consider adding your support and keeping the coffee pot on. Contact us for more information. We ask that you hit the like, follow, bell, or bookmark buttons so we can keep you informed of upcoming podcast episodes. We hope you enjoyed Santa Cruz Coffee Break. Now it's time to go play your guitar.